We're diving deep today into a story that's fascinated people for decades. A tale that kind of blurs the lines between reality and something truly extraordinary.
You know, it's a case that even within the UFO community, it really sparks intense debate. Was it a real encounter with extraterrestrials? Or was it a cleverly orchestrated hoax? The Travis Walton incident, it really makes you question what you believe.
Right back in 1975, in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona, Travis Walton, a young forestry worker, vanished for 5 days. And when he reappeared, he claimed he had been abducted by a UFO. And what's even more intriguing is that he wasn't alone when it happened.
That's right. Walton vanished in front of 6 witnesses, his entire work crew, and they reported seeing a bright light in the forest, Walton running toward it, and then being struck by a beam of light. It's a pretty chilling scene to imagine.
Their account of that night has been scrutinized and debated for decades now. Some people find it a very credible account of a close encounter, while others just see it as a total fabrication.
Yeah, to really understand the evidence, though, we need to consider all the circumstances surrounding this incident.
Okay, let's start with Walton and his crew. What was going on in their lives leading up to that night?
Well, they were under a really tight deadline for a difficult forestry contract, thinning out trees. It was demanding work, and they were falling behind schedule. In fact, Mike Rogers, the crew leader, admitted in writing that they might miss the deadline.
Missing a deadline, that can be stressful. But was there more at stake than just their reputation?
Absolutely. They were facing potential financial penalties and even disqualification from future contracts if they didn't finish the job on time, so the pressure was immense.
Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Just 2 weeks before Walton's disappearance, NBC aired a movie called The UFO Incident. It starred James Earl Jones and featured a strikingly similar plot. A couple spots a UFO, and the husband is abducted.
Yeah, you know, this coincidence is hard to ignore, especially considering that Rogers and Walton had actually discussed the film and even talked about faking a UFO abduction themselves.
A stressed work crew facing a financial crisis. A popular UFO movie fresh in their minds. It certainly raises the possibility of a staged event, doesn't it?
It really does. But we also have to consider, the cultural context of the time. The 1970s saw a surge in public fascination with UFOs. There were tons of sightings and stories of alien encounters, and the idea of extraterrestrial life was, it was permeating popular culture.
So even if the crew wasn't in a desperate situation or inspired by the movie, the cultural climate was ripe for a UFO story to take root and spread.
Exactly, yes. The cultural context is crucial to understanding why this case resonated so deeply with the public and why it continues to be debated even today.
Okay, let's go back to that night in the forest. The crew spots a light. Walton runs toward it, gets hit by a beam. What happens next?
According to the crew, they were terrified and drove away. And when they returned a short while later, both Walton and the light were gone.
And that's when they reported him missing.
Yes. But when the sheriff went to notify Walton's family, he was struck by their reaction. They were surprisingly calm, almost as if they expected his disappearance.
That's certainly strange. Do they know something that the authorities didn't?
Well, there's some evidence suggesting that the Walton family was already interested in UFOs. It's possible they believed Travis had been taken and would return safely.
Okay, so we've got a missing person, a UFO sighting, a family with a known interest in UFOs. The plot thickens. Did the police launch an investigation?
Of course. There was an extensive search involving dozens of people and even a helicopter, but they found absolutely nothing. No trace of Walton, no signs of a struggle, no debris, nothing.
During this time, did anyone from the family make any statements about Travis's disappearance?
Yes. Dwayne, Travis's brother, made some interesting remarks during an interview with a UFO interest group. He said, "Travis knows where he's at, and I know where he's at," implying that Travis wasn't really missing. He also mentioned that if he and Travis had the chance to go under a UFO, they wouldn't hesitate because the opportunity to go aboard would be too great to pass up.
Those are some bold statements, almost like a plan was already in motion.
It certainly lends itself to that interpretation. These statements fueled the suspicions of a potential hoax.
All right, so we've got a missing person, a UFO sighting, a family with a known interest in UFOs, and some curious statements from the brother. What happens next?
The crew, under mounting pressure, agreed to take polygraph tests, both by law enforcement and a private examiner hired by a UFO group. And this is where things take an even more complicated turn.
Polygraph tests, especially back then, were known for their unreliability. What were the results?
It's a mixed bag. The polygraph tests administered by law enforcement focused on whether the crew had harmed Walton, not on the UFO aspect. Those tests found no evidence of foul play. However, a private examiner concluded that Walton was being deceptive.
So, more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And this is all before Walton even returns. What happens next?
5 days after vanishing, Walton calls his sister from a payphone in Heber, Arizona. He's disoriented and confused. His account of what happened during those missing days is, well, let's just say it's out of this world.
Oh, come on. You can't leave us hanging like that. We'll be back soon to uncover what happened next, right?
Absolutely. We'll delve into Walton's story, the medical evidence, the media frenzy, and explore some fascinating theories about what might have truly happened. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.
We left off with Travis Walton reappearing after 5 days, calling his sister from a payphone, sounding disoriented and confused. Did he go straight to the police?
Not exactly. His brother, Dwayne, picked him up, but instead of going to the authorities, they first went to a hypnotherapist.
The hypnotherapist. That's an interesting choice. Why a hypnotherapist?
Dwayne and Travis wanted to try to recover any suppressed memories Travis might have had of his experience. Remember, he was still very disoriented at this point.
Okay, that makes sense. So what happened when they met with a hypnotherapist?
Well, the hypnotherapist Lester Stewart actually advised against immediate hypnosis. He felt that Travis needed a proper medical evaluation first. He observed that Travis was acting very confused, almost like someone recovering from drug use. He even noticed a lesion on Travis's elbow that looked like it could have been caused by an IV drug injection.
Okay, so maybe not the alien evidence everyone was hoping for. Did Travis end up seeing a doctor?
He did. After seeing Stewart, Dwayne took Travis to two doctors who were also interested in UFOs, but their examination was a bit unusual. Dwayne wouldn't let the doctors use their camera or tape recorder, and he wouldn't allow them to ask Travis any questions about his experience.
That's a bit odd, isn't it? Trying to control the narrative that closely.
It certainly raises questions. The doctors did note the lesion on Travis's elbow and estimated it to be about 24 to 48 hours old.
Eventually, the police did get involved, right? This was still an active missing person case, after all.
They did, but not right away. After some back and forth, Dwayne finally contacted Sheriff Gillespie, who insisted on speaking with Travis immediately. The sheriff drove 4 hours to meet them, but Dwayne and Travis insisted that he not record the interview.
Wow, they were really determined to manage how their story was being told. So did Travis finally reveal what happened during those 5 missing days?
He did, and what he described was extraordinary, Twitter. Travis claimed that after being hit by the beam of light, he lost consciousness. He said when he woke up, he was in a hospital-like room surrounded by 3 short, bald creatures.
Short, bald creatures. It sounds like something out of a science fiction film.
He said he fought with them until a human wearing a helmet led him to another room. There, he blacked out again after 3 other humans put a clear plastic mask over his face.
His story is getting more and more unbelievable. Did the police believe him?
Well, remember, the police had already given the crew polygraph tests, and the results were inconclusive. They asked Travis to take a polygraph test, too. But he initially skipped the scheduled test.
That's not going to look good in the eyes of law enforcement, is it? Skipping a polygraph test when you're the key witness in a missing person case.
No, it wasn't. However, he did eventually agree to a polygraph exam. This one was conducted by a private examiner arranged by a UFO group, and, interestingly, the National Enquirer.
Wait, the National Enquirer, the tabloid known for sensationalized stories.
Yes. And here's where the media frenzy surrounding this case really exploded. The National Enquirer ended up awarding Walton and his crew a $5,000 prize for the best UFO case of the year, claiming they'd all passed their polygraph tests.
But we know that's not entirely accurate, right? There were conflicting results for the various polygraph exams, and even suspicions that some of the crew, including Walton, might have been deliberately trying to fool the polygraph.
Exactly. And there were even more questions surrounding the polygraph examiner hired by the National Enquirer. He was later found to have a history of promoting questionable UFO claims.
So it seems like the lines between truth and fabrication were becoming increasingly blurred, fueled by the media's hunger for a sensational story.
Absolutely. And this is a recurring theme in the Travis Walton incident. The more publicity the case received, the more difficult it became to separate fact from fiction. Truth, it seemed, had become a matter of perspective.
So how did the story evolve from here? Did it fade away or continue to capture the public's imagination?
Oh, the story was far from over. In 1978, Travis Walton wrote a book titled The Walton Experience, detailing his account of the abduction. And then in 1993, his story was adapted into a major Hollywood film called Fire in the Sky.
Fire in the Sky. That film was pretty terrifying, especially abduction scenes. Did it stay true to Walton's story?
Actually, no Paramount Pictures felt that Walton's account was too similar to other alien abduction stories, so they made some creative changes for the film.
So even the Hollywood version wasn't entirely accurate.
Right, it goes to show you how a story can take on a life of its own when it becomes this popular. The truth often gets lost in the retelling.
The Travis Walton incident was firmly embedded in pop culture by then. But what about the skeptics? Were they convinced by the book and the movie?
Not at all. The more attention the case received, the more it was scrutinized by skeptics. They pointed to inconsistencies in the crew's stories, the questionable polygraph results, and the possible financial motives for faking an abduction. And as the years went by, another twist emerged, one that threw everything into question yet again.
There's more. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued.
What happened? In 2021, Mike Rogers, the crew leader, made a shocking announcement. He publicly recanted his previous statements about the incident, claiming that the entire event had been staged.
Wait, are you serious? After all these years, he admits it was a hoax. What was his explanation?
Rogers said that he and Walton had talked about creating a UFO hoax, but that he didn't know how the UFO itself got there. He also claimed he felt betrayed by Walton, who he said had been keeping secrets from him about a possible new movie deal.
Wow, that's quite a bombshell to drop after all these years. Did this finally put the Travis Walton incident to rest?
Well, not exactly. Rogers later retracted his confession, claiming he was under duress and that his statements had been misinterpreted. He and Walton even appeared together at a UFO convention, seemingly reconciled.
So we're back to square one. After all this time, are we any closer to the truth?
The Travis Walton incident remains an enigma. Even with Rogers' short-lived confession, there's compelling evidence on both sides. It ultimately boils down to what you choose to believe.
It sounds like we've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating case. There's still so much to explore and unpack. Where do we go from here?
Well, in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some fascinating new theories that have emerged in recent years. We'll examine how the Travis Walton incident compares to other alien abduction stories, and take a look at the potential role a nearby fire lookout tower might have played in this whole saga.
A fire lookout tower. Okay, you've definitely got my attention. Join us for the final part of our deep dive into the Travis Walton incident as we try to decipher fact from fiction and delve deeper into this enduring mystery. We've gone through so much evidence and speculation around this Travis Walton incident, conflicting polygraph results, a retracted confession, and a story that, it just keeps capturing people's imaginations decades later. Now let's dive into some new theories and insights that may shed some light on this mystery.
The Travis Walton incident continues to fascinate researchers and the public alike. And one of the most intriguing developments in recent years is that gentrifier lookout tower theory.
You mentioned this theory earlier. It involves a fire lookout tower near where Walton disappeared. Can you elaborate on how this tower might be connected to the incident?
Sure. So the gentrifier lookout tower stands about 70 feet tall, and it's located relatively close to where Walton supposedly vanished. It's equipped with living quarters for the lookout, a metal catwalk, and, crucially, a powerful spotlight.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. Are you suggesting that this spotlight could have been used to create the illusion of a UFO?
That's precisely what some researchers believe. Just picture this. It's a dark night. Walton is walking towards the brightly lit tower, and someone inside the tower aims the spotlight at him. From the perspective of the crew, it would look like a beam of light coming down from the sky hitting Walton.
That's a clever idea. But wouldn't the crew have recognized the tower? They were working in that area, so they must have known it was there.
That's a valid point. However, remember, it was dark, and they were already frightened by what they thought was a UFO. Their fear and the darkness could have easily distorted their perception. Plus, there's another detail that supports this theory.
What's that?
The crew usually took a different route back to town, but on the night of the incident, they took a route that passed right by the gentrifier lookout tower.
So they could have been misled about their location, making the appearance of the UFO even more convincing.
Exactly. If they already believed they were witnessing a UFO, their perceptions would have been easily influenced by what they saw, especially under those circumstances.
This theory does seem to connect several dots, but it raises another question. If this was all staged, how did they get an accomplice up into the fire lookout tower at night without anyone noticing?
That's the million-dollar question. Researchers are still exploring this aspect. Perhaps someone climbed the tower undetected, or maybe they had assistance from someone within the Forest Service. It's a puzzle that remains unsolved.
Okay, so the gentrifier lookout tower theory presents a plausible explanation for how the UFO sighting could have been faked. But what about Walton's abduction story itself? Are there any insights into how that might have been fabricated, or are we just left with speculation?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about how the Travis Walton incident compares to other alien abduction stories, especially those that emerged in the 1980s. What's interesting is that Walton's account lacks many of the details that became common in those later stories.
What kind of details are we talking about?
Think sleep paralysis, missing time, recovered memories through hypnosis, or detailed descriptions of alien medical examinations. Walton's story is much more straightforward. He remembers being taken aboard the UFO, encountering the creatures, and then being released. There's a stark contrast between his account and the more elaborate narratives that followed.
So does this simplicity make his story more credible because it predates those common themes, or less credible because it lacks the details we've come to expect from abduction stories?
That's the heart of the debate. Some researchers argue that the absence of those common abduction tropes suggests Walton's story is more likely to be true. It doesn't seem like he borrowed from other narratives. However, others contend that the lack of those details actually makes it more likely to be a hoax.
It seems like the more we learn about the Travis Walton incident, the less it's certain we become about what truly happened. But maybe that's the point. Perhaps this is one of those enduring mysteries that will never be fully solved.
You might be right. And maybe that's what keeps us coming back to this story. It challenges our assumptions about what's possible and forces us to confront the limits of our understanding. It makes us question our beliefs about reality and the unknown.
It's a story that touches on our deepest fears and fascinations, our curiosity about the universe, and our need to make sense of the world around us.
Precisely. Whether you believe Travis Walton was abducted by aliens or that it was an elaborate hoax, his story has had a profound impact on our culture. It has sparked countless discussions, books, movies, and documentaries, and the debate continues.
The gentrifier lookout tower theory opens a whole new line of inquiry. It raises questions about who might have been involved in orchestrating the event, how they managed to pull it off, and what their motivations were.
We've only scratched the surface of this captivating case. There are still so many layers to uncover, so many possibilities to ponder. And who knows, maybe someday new evidence will come to light that finally reveals the truth about what happened to Travis Walton on that November night in 1975.
Until then, the mystery endures, inviting us to grapple with the unknown and to question the very nature of reality. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.